Are you ready to hear an inspirational hero tale about one of our four-legged friends? My name is Kim, and this is Harry Hero Tales. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of Harry Hero Tales, Animals to the Rescue. I'm your host, Kim Hagel. How many times have you seen a news broadcast about a canine police officer that helped track down a lost child, maybe even an adult, or they chased down a criminal suspect? I've always been impressed with their bravery, training, and the true bond they have with their fellow officers and trainer. Well, today, we're going to learn a bit more about them and about how we can help to support them. Because in many towns and rural areas around the country, they are underfunded and need outside help to keep their programs active. To explore this more, we have with us today a very special guest. But before she joins us, I'd like to give you just a bit about her background. Like me, while her passion and personal cause centers around the love of animals, and in particular dogs, she has a very different day job. Graduating from William Patterson University of New Jersey with a BA in Communications and Accounting in 1990, she has successfully navigated through large corporations and roles to achieve a senior executive level finance position within the competitive industry of clinical research and biotechnologies. Now, while this is a very impressive background, that isn't why she's with us today. A lifelong animal rescuer, she found her personal focus after a particular rescue some 6 years ago. Coming to her injured with broken ribs and likely emotional traumas from an abusive home, her Black German Shepherd was a challenge that changed her life. Her words, for the better. Now, if you remember couple of episodes ago, we talked about the 3-3-3 rule. Well, here's a perfect example of that. After 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months with her new rescue, she realized she needed to seek outside help. She sought help from a trainer, but this was a very specialized one. Having previously trained police canines, the trainer worked with her young shepherd, as did our guest, to ultimately teach him to be confident, stable, and truly feel at home with our guest. The transformation opened our guest's eyes and mind. And then it was COVID. So like all of us, our guest was homebound while waiting out the pandemic. And thanks to some curiosity, she started swiping through social media, and in particular, TikTok, and she landed on some very interesting posts. Finding accounts on TikTok around the amazing police canines, she was, quote, hooked. Her deep admiration led her to follow an organization that she became more and more familiar with, the Georgia Police Canine Foundation. Ultimately, our guest became a supporter of the organization, attending events such as the Evening with the Canines, which is an annual fundraiser. And there she met many of the heroes and trainers, along with like-minded participants that she had seen on the social media accounts. But our guest isn't a resident of Georgia. She actually lives and works here in North Carolina. Inspired by the work the foundation was doing in Georgia, she did some research and found that North Carolina had a need for its own foundation. Our guest, along with other similarly inspired people, developed a plan and launched in 2024 a nonprofit organization called the North Carolina Police Canine Foundation. This worthy cause supports active and retired police canines across North Carolina by raising funds for equipment such as vests, trauma kits, as well as medical care for retired canine dogs. She is now, in fact, on its board of directors. Today, our guest will not only share more about the amazing work this foundation does for North Carolina police canines, might actually even inspire you to look into your state and see if you have a similar need, but she'll also be sharing one particular canine police officer's story and incredible work and bravery. Please join me in welcoming to the show Kelly Gofredo. Hey there, Kelly. Welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you with us.
Hey, Kim. How are you? I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so very welcome. And I want to put out there as full disclosure for our listeners. The truth is that Kelly and I have actually known each other for, lady, it is coming up on 10 years, if you can believe that.
It really is.
I know, we actually met when we were coworkers at the same company, like I said, about 10 years ago. And we didn't bond over that. We actually just had, we had a few chats and discovered that we were both animal lovers, and in particular, dogs. And we had quite a few conversations. And I think at the time, the rescue that I mentioned in the intro that you were feeling a little challenged about, I think might have been the spark that really connected us quite closely. So why don't you walk us through, I haven't revealed his name yet, but why don't you walk us through that experience and how you came to have this rescue dog and the experience you had with your trainer?
Sure, absolutely. Well, his name is Jax. It didn't start off as Jax, but he's now 6 years old, and I found him through a friend of a friend as a rescue. He was severely abused. Came to me with broken ribs, fleas, worms, and he was just 10 weeks old. 10 weeks and broken ribs. It
Wow.
was heartbreaking. And what started as this rescue became quickly, became a life-changing bond for me because, his trauma, and working with the trainer, who specialized in shepherds and specialized in canines. It took me two trainers, but I finally found a trainer in Mooresville that specialized in shepherds and particularly police canines. And then just watching what Jax was capable of after being trained and after going through that abuse, it just blew me away how smart these dogs are. And it just gave me a whole new appreciation for working dogs. I've had pets. All of my dogs have been rescues. But
Right. Yep.
this breed is just and how their drive is and how the loyalty and the bond they have is just amazing.
Well, it's not by accident that German Shepherds are highly sought after when it comes to police canines,
Yes.
right? So it makes sense, and you got to witness, I guess, firsthand the reason why.
Yes. And originally I thought, okay, maybe Jax can do some good. Not that I would ever want to, not that I wanted to get rid of him. He was being abused in a rescue. It was, and him being taken away from his mom very early on. He had social, anxiety. And I said, well, if he could be trained to do something good, I was going to donate him, to the Mooresville Police Department at the time. They had just lost a canine officer, and
Mm.
I thought they would retire the actual police dog. And I said, well, maybe Jax could go do some good. My father was a police officer, so aside from the love of dogs, the affiliation with what our police officers do is very close to my heart as well. So I thought maybe Jax could do some good. Except he was a canine fail as far as that's concerned. you know, he
What do you mean? What happened?
well, they called and said, well, I think Jax needs to stay with you. Your investment, this will be the best investment, that you've made. Because when they sent him to do the bite work, They sent him to bite and he wouldn't let go. So that is
Oh.
key. Yes, key in training where, the recall, was not there once he actually bit the bite sleeve. So thank goodness he failed because now he's with me.
Right. Well, and that just goes to show how specialized what canine police officers do,
Yes.
and the ones that are selected, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of investment of time and
Mhm.
people and resources, and they don't all make it, right?
No.
So that's why when you see some of these stories, that's out on the news or social media, what they do is so extraordinary because they choose and train dogs that are they have an aptitude, right? They follow instructions. They learn quickly, and they truly bond with their trainer. So
Yes.
um, even though he was a fail, it was a happy fail for you, right? So
And it really led me into this whole new world that, I've found and, become involved
right.
in. And, it was the best thing that could ever had happen.
Well, and I mentioned that in the intro. So you had Jax. You were working with him. You had a trainer that was a former canine police officer
Mm-hmm.
trainer. So you witnessed some very specialized training with Jax, and then bam, it's COVID, and
Yeah.
you're working from home, and you've got a little stir crazy like all of us did, and
Yes.
you found social media, you found TikTok, and that led you down a little bit more, right?
Oh,
With
yeah.
paying attention to what was right. So why don't you walk us through that, and what did you discover? Where'd you land that inspired the next path that you were on?
Sure, sure, yes. And like you said, it was COVID. We were all scrolling through TikTok, and it was very early on in TikTok, and a lot of the police canine handlers were using that platform to humanize the badge. They wanted,
Mm.
everyone to, get to know them, to get to know their dogs. And I found Canine Mattis. He's retired now, but he was an Alpharetta, Georgia police canine. And he started off, they are doing like, funny, quirky videos, dancing with the dog and showing, what the dog could do. Some of the demos. And this was very early on when a lot of the departments would allow the officers to actually, when they're sitting in their cars, film in their car. Some of that has gone away. But I found Canine Mattis, and you know, it that opened up a whole new world. And of course, I start searching for other police canines and start following other animals. But Mattis's story, really has, with Mark, his handler, it opened up a different area for me. And
So I can see behind you, you've got some things on display that
yep,
obviously has this dog's name on it. So there's a lot of material, there's a lot of content. I'm assuming that there's a lot of
yes,
reasons why
it,
Mattis is
yes,
so well known. So
yeah.
any of that you want to share and talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. He is a, dual purpose canine. He was 6 years on the job. He is the dual purpose is apprehension. Apprehension and tracking is, one, and then narcotics detection is another. So he had, to my knowledge, $3 million in drug seizures. He was on 20 successful tracks, and what that is they sent him out on a track to either find perpetrators or somebody that might have been lost. He's been out on 20 tracks. Has had over 200 arrests. Um, and he was the most decorated dog in the Alpharetta, Georgia, in their department history. And he's over that. He's had AKC awards. He's been on America's Top Dog. And what put him into retirement, and Mark speaks about this in his book, is he did get a Purple Heart for this, but he sustained injuries during one of these chases. It was a 30-foot tall wall that he fell over. So Mark talks
Oof.
about this in his book, where they were on a chase, and Mattis was, chasing and trying to apprehend, and he was running through a parking lot, and they hit this wall, and Mattis didn't know what was on the other side of that wall. It was a 30-foot drop.
Mm.
Mattis got
Wow.
up. Mattis got up and kept going and got the suspect.
You're kidding. So wait a
Yeah.
minute. So the perpetrator that he was chasing leapt off the same wall.
Yes.
Mattis went
Mattis.
after him, but it was 30 feet down. The
Yep.
perpetrator also kept running, and Mattis
Got him.
got
him.
his man.
Yep. And
Wow. But he
unfortunately,
was hurt, obviously, after. Yeah.
yes. And unfortunately, it put him into retirement. But this was the dog that sparked this whole journey for me. Meeting
So have you
Mattis.
met Mattis? Oh, so sorry. I was just going to ask that. So you've met
Sorry.
Mattis.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
Um,
Go ahead.
Mattis, and his handler, they're a part of another foundation called the Georgia Police Canine Foundation. And, that foundation, um, they do for all police dogs that are either in service, retired. They provide vests. They provide heat alarms for the car, because in the South, if the officer is out on a traffic stop and the dog, they don't need the dog. The dog's in the car. Well, if the air conditioning stops in the car, there's a heat alarm that gets installed. And there have been a number of canine officers that have passed away in the car because they didn't have a heat alarm, or it malfunctioned, or something like that. But so the Georgia Police Canine Foundation provides, medical equipment, and in retirement medical, because these canine officers do not get, once they retire, they do not get medical care. It's all on the handler. And
Mm.
anyone that has an actual pet knows how expensive it is.
Yes, I'm aware. I know. I have to save up sometimes when I know something's potentially coming. So, but I can
Right?
only imagine. I mean, an animal that is put through the physical work that they do. I mean, it is a job. They're out
Mm-hmm.
on a job, and they have the potential to, apparently fall off a 30-foot wall. They can be shot at. They can,
Yeah.
who knows what weapons might be wielded if they're in certain situations. So the fact that aftercare is something that is needed, and the organization that you first encountered, because of Mattis, the Georgia Police Canine Foundation, they raise funds in order to support these working dogs at the time, but also retirees
Yes.
after the fact. So it's a great organization that is essentially supporting the continuation of the police canines, because without that, I'm not sure, how do you sustain a program if you don't have an outside organization, especially in small towns or rural areas that
Right.
have the funds to fund it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And these, the initial investment for a police department that has a canine unit, these dogs are, like you said earlier, the training, and it's expensive to even have a canine on the job. So without foundations like the Georgia Police Canine Foundation, and there are many others across, the country, and Georgia does Evening with the Canines every year. And I have now attended two. I'm going to my third one in June, and it's a fundraiser. They have about 40 some odd, canines there with their handlers. They do demos, there's auctions, and for people like me who just have this admiration, I get to meet these heroes, and the first time I met Mattis, and it's it was very exciting for me. And some of the other dogs that I have had followed for two years, and meeting them, and just thanking them. It was,
Right.
it's other, and having other like-minded people there that I now call friends.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I went to an event like that, I'd probably fangirl at myself
Oh,
if I
I
saw
know.
a hero like Mattis.
Yeah. Like, and I'm wearing his
So,
shirt, and I'm like standing
oh
in
yeah, let me
line.
see.
I
You're
know.
wearing a shirt? Let me see. Yeah, stand up just a little bit. Ah, there you go.
You
Madison
know,
me. Nice. Yeah,
yes.
I
Yeah,
would. I'd fangirl out like I was going to a rock concert back in the
I
80s.
know. I know. And it's like you get your picture with them, and and it's you stand on lines. I think combined now, Mattis has about 5 million followers between like social media platforms.
That's great. It also shows there are a lot of people that think like we do, and that
Hmm.
probably
Yes.
would be interested in the book that you're talking about. That his would he
Yes.
be owner now or handler? What would he be called? Both?
I think well, I think, he's now, so what happens is, when Mattis retired, um, you know,
Mm,
Mark, is not a canine. He didn't get another dog. Some canine handlers, when their dog retires, there's a couple of other ones in the organization, in the foundation, that, their dogs have retired, and then they'll get another one. But Mark decided, and Mark is still on the job. He's still he's a sergeant in the Alpharetta Police Department. But I think now, he's just retired, canine.
Well, I mean, the bond, I can only imagine when you're in a situation that I'm sure the two of them were in. If I think you said he was a police canine for 6 years,
Yes,
so
Mattis.
that's a
Yeah,
lot of time, right? And that's a lot of time that you're in very stressful, very I suppose, scary situations, and the bond would probably strengthen even more. And it sounds to me like this dog was in particular very, very special. So I can understand.
yes,
He's still a police officer, but it's hard to move on. I had a few episodes ago where I was talking about my co-host that was with me from the start of this podcast. It was really kind of hard to move on, and that is nothing like the scale of what Mark and Mattis did together, and
yeah,
and the bravery that they shared together. And so I can understand being supportive, but maybe not being ready for another
yeah,
dog. So
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
so back to the Georgia Police Canine Foundation. You attended a lot of their events. You were following them on social media. But it also inspired you to do a little research because you don't live in the state of Georgia. You live where I do, which is in the state of North Carolina. And what did you discover when you did a little bit of research about what North Carolina does to support our police canines?
Well, through that research, we didn't find a lot of organizations that actually did something similar to Georgia. Georgia's been doing this for, a long time. So with the people that I've met, from North Carolina, so going around the whole event, with all the all the people and all the handlers there, I came across one handler and another black, full on black German Shepherd, So I'm like, oh, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm Canine Joker, and it's like all black, a little bigger than Jack's. And so I'm, just standing there, take my picture, and he's like, oh, you can hold his leash. And this was the first handler that was like, you can hold the leash. And I'm like, okay, so super exciting for me. Again, fangirling over this dog. So we started chatting, and I found out that he was a canine handler in Oakboro, North Carolina. And he had a couple of friends with him, and so we were just chatting. And I'm like, "Is there anything like this in North Carolina?" And he's like, "There is nothing that we know of in North Carolina like this." So we, said okay, and then circled back. We're milling around the event, circled back, and I'm like, I've been thinking, you know this would be really good to do in North Carolina. And just saying that out loud, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a this is not going to be like a part-time thing. And, we need people
Right.
and, like-minded people invested in doing this, because getting something off the ground, it's great to be like, yeah, I want to do it. But then when it comes down to people actually doing it, it's a lot of work. So, Chris, who is the president of the board. We started the North Carolina Police Canine Foundation, applied for the 501c3 and got approved. And, so we've got a small board of people and, super, super excited to get this. We're just getting it off the ground.
So, for listeners, just for clarification, the 501c3
Yes, is nonprofit.
is what? Okay, so that your nonprofit organization, that's official, and you launched in 2024,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So, walk us through what are some of the initial things that your organization has been doing?
So, of course, just starting off small, we did reach out to Kyle, who runs the Georgia Police Canine Foundation, for some tips. And we've got all of the foundation board and all the bylaws, and getting all that, getting the president and the treasurer, and making sure that the foundation has the solid base to actually start off, with, like every other nonprofit foundation. So, we've kind of tried to model around the Georgia in a much smaller, because we're just starting out. So right now, we've been just going around, and it's created the Facebook page, started following, different police departments and their canines, and just raising money through, there's a thing in the canine community called a challenge coin. And a lot of canines are put on the challenge coin, and those are sold for, people collect these challenge coins, and they have these boards that they put them on. And it was just starting off with like some bottle openers and some pens and just some fundraising things to start some funds coming in. A lot of this is donated out of our pockets to buy trauma kits for the dogs. When a dog is called to do a track, or when they're called in to do an apprehension or to sniff out narcotics, these dogs need, they could get injured, their paw could get injured, something else. We've also started working with some companies to get a discount on buying Narcan kits, because if the dog comes in contact with fentanyl, just like a human, the dog could, feel the effects from the fentanyl. So, they're Narcan kits for the dogs. So we've been donating those across the state, to just different police departments that have found us, that have reached out to say, hey, do you have a trauma kit? So we've been delivering those in Lincoln County, in, Catawba, Iredell, Mecklenburg, all the counties. We live in the Charlotte proper area for the most part. So it's just, we're kind of like expanding out throughout the state.
Well, it sounds like you've done a lot in a short amount of time. That's congratulations. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's
And
it's super exciting.
yeah, well, and I'm sure the canine units across North Carolina must be thrilled to have similar support that Georgia's had. I'm sure they were probably aware of it and knew that, there was certainly a need. You guys have stepped in and started filling that. So I think that's amazing, and I'm sure they're very appreciative of the support that your group is providing and building from nothing to. It sounds like what you're doing in a short amount of time is pretty incredible. So I'm excited to follow you guys and see what the
Yeah.
continuation of that is. I'd be curious to know, have you had anything that you've run across as you've started interacting with these North Carolina police canines that you learned and surprised you, and that your organization is going to be supporting even more going forward?
Absolutely. And it did actually come as a huge surprise. Last weekend, we were invited up to Lake Hickory with the Caldwell County Sheriff's Office, and they've kicked off a canine awareness program where they're doing canine demos, and they have their, drug detection dogs, and they'll do a demo. But they invited us to come up to, it was just a Lake Hickory, a restaurant right on the lake there, and we were set up right next to the Caldwell County Sheriff's Office, and they want to bring attention to the public what their canine officers do. And like I said, there's apprehension dogs and drug detection dogs, but the thing that surprised me, and I did not know that they even had this type of, canine. I met an electronic detection dog, Canine Harrison, and he is a big yellow lab. He's one of the one canines that you can actually go up and hug and get kisses from. Because a lot of the other canines, while they're friendly,
Right.
they are a different breed of working dog. So Canine Harrison is a lab, and he was donated through a grant to the Caldwell County Sheriff's Office. Um, and he specializes, and this is what blew me away. He solves cases involving digital evidence. And I was like, wait a minute, what is that?
Yeah. How does that work? Right.
Yes. His training allows him to detect hidden electronic devices, SIM cards, laptops, cell phones, USB drives. And I'm like, okay, but why would you need this? And I'm like, and so in meeting, the canine handler and Harrison, his primary focus is assisting in the intelligent crimes against children department. So it's fighting against online exploitation of children. And I was just blown away by that, and I'm like, you know, hearing that you have apprehension dogs and drug detection dogs, they are very
Right.
important, right? But now I'm like, this is just, and so Caldwell County has, said, hey, we're going to be doing a lot of these events. We would like you guys, to come spread your awareness of helping, just not in Caldwell County. So, we get the awareness out there, and hopefully it just takes off.
Well, I mean, that's a unique skill that obviously, sadly, is needed because of the exploitation and quite frankly, just scary predators that are out there after children. And first of all, I think it's brilliant that somebody decided there's got to be a way. But I mean, to think that someone realized that when you're after someone who is a predator and the evidence is stored somewhere
Mm-hmm.
electronically that you haven't discovered yet, you haven't found either the laptop, or that they might have an external drive or a flash drive, and you got to look through their home or look through their office or who knows where, these
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
disgusting people are to train a dog to find that under the mattress or in a closet or, wherever they manage to tuck this
hide
stuff
it.
in the house.
Mhm.
Right. Because that evidence is, to me, you find that's game over. The importance of
Oh, yeah.
what this dog, was it, Harrison?
Harrison.
Right? I wrote
Yes.
that down as Harrison. Yeah, what Harrison is doing in Caldwell County, and hopefully it sounds like he's going to be available to support across North Carolina, which is awesome. But to fund that same thing with your organization's help and others that may want to reach out and donate, I that's one of the most worthy causes I think I've heard in a long time.
I know. It was a complete shock because I see this like big yellow lab coming out, and it's, I'm used to seeing Belgian Malinois, shepherds, Dutch shepherds, and I'm, used to seeing all, that type of dog. Now I know that they have other breeds as police canine. And I think of, the labs of, and, Harrison is he was trained as a therapy dog as well, but his specialty is this electronic, detection. And I was just thinking, okay, therapy, maybe he's, because labs do have, great noses. I'm like, maybe he is like a drug dog
Right.
too. But then it was this, and I was just like, okay, it's amazing. And I should have the statistics, and I know that he is just like there are not that many of these dogs yet out there that do this work. I'm not sure. He might be the only one in the state, and I can actually, get the statistics on that, but there are not, from hearing the officer, there are not a lot of these dogs out there.
Well, I would imagine if it's new, right? New training, it's got to be validated. They've obviously successfully validated Harrison anyway,
Mhm.
and in order to have demonstrations to let people know, and this podcast certainly will share this information on our website and in the notes for this podcast, so that people can follow and people can be aware and support if they can in any way, because I would love to see dogs with that kind of skill everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I
So,
mean,
and that's what your organization is all about, is getting the word out and raising funds for advancements
mhm.
and medical support and safety equipment, all of the things that the police canine units need. But this one is, wow, that's fringe
Yeah.
in a good way that I would
Yes.
certainly be excited to watch and follow,
Yes.
um, to see successful
Mhm.
apprehension because of, not solely because of, but certainly a contributing, solid factor in being able to arrest and hopefully convict
Convict. Mhm.
someone that's out there, right,
Yes.
attacking children.
Children.
So, or certainly, putting them in harm's way. And ugh, yeah, that
Yes.
whole thing is,
Yes.
that would be on the top of my radar that I'd be
Yes.
looking for.
Yes.
All right. So, I want to make sure that we share with our listeners all the different ways that they can either get involved or certainly follow you and support. As I've been on your social media, I know you share a lot of different
Mhm.
fundraising activities, announcements about upcoming events that people can attend and go to across North Carolina. So let's make sure all of your contact information is out there. Email is ncpoliceK9foundation@gmail.com. Right.
Yep.
And so
That's
the
correct.
the NC Police K, the letter K, nine, the
Yes.
number nine, foundation@gmail.com.
That's correct.
Your website, your website is ncpolicek9foundation.org. Again, that's K, the letter K, nine, the number nine, foundation.org. Facebook, They can find you by searching North Carolina Police Canine Foundation. And on Instagram, they can find you at NCPK9F. Obviously stands for North Carolina Police Canine Foundation. So, all right. Is there anything else you would want to leave with any of the listeners? Is there an upcoming event? Do you have a fundraiser that's going to be happening soon that they should watch out for?
We actually are in talks right now. We wanted to have one in October, but we're, trying to trying to get an event going by the end of the year, so whether it's October or Christmas, but we'll definitely keep everyone updated on all the social media platforms, trying to find a space similar to what Georgia does, on a smaller scale, right? They've been doing it for a long time. Just trying to find an event space that would allow us to bring the canines, somewhere inside where the canines could go take a break, where we can hold a small auction. Surprisingly, it's a little hard to find, a space like that, but we're trying. So that would be one of our goals for this year, is to have a small fundraiser by the end of the year,
So certainly for our listeners, please be sure to follow the North Carolina Police Canine Foundation on social media. Check out their website. I have done so and signed up so they can keep you up to date, which clearly, if this event is going to be taking place, the foundation will be sending out emails and alerting folks, as well as putting it out on social media. And find all these stories of the amazing things that these canines are doing across the state of North Carolina and, quite frankly, the United States. I have utmost respect for what these well-trained police officers do, and they truly are police officers. They happen to be canines, but they do really important work, and I could not be happier for you, Kelly. I think when I think about when we first met 10 years ago and your situation with Jax, and obviously where that has led and where you are now to be on the board of this organization that you helped start, is incredible. And I'm so glad that we connected and you were gracious enough to agree to be on the podcast to tell a little bit about what you're doing and how things are going with Jax. So I really enjoyed having you with us today. And hopefully in the future, I have a feeling that there are a lot of different animals and a lot of different stories that you'd be able to share and talk to us about. So I'm hopeful that someday, if you're not too busy in the future, we'll be able to have you back.
Yes, absolutely, Kim. I am so grateful for you, to reconnect and, have being on the podcast. It was, amazing. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, I thank you so much for being here, and we'll leave it there. And be sure to follow the North Carolina Police Canine Foundation to learn more. While that only touches the surface of this amazing hairy hero, we have to leave it there for this episode. If you know of a great hairy hero tale and would like to hear it on this podcast, email us at hairyherotales@gmail.com. For more information on this program, visit our website, www.hairyherotales.com. That's TAILS.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcasts. This is a Southpaw Productions podcast, edited, produced, and hosted by me, Kim Hagel. Opening and closing music provided by Mary Selvage. You can follow her and find out her show schedule at Selvage613 on Instagram, and check out her complete catalog of music available on Spotify, Apple Music, and more. And remember, there are four-legged heroes all around us. Who knows, you might even adopt one. I've adopted many little heroes from some amazing rescue organizations, and I've featured two on my website: the All-American Dachshund Rescue and the French Bulldog Rescue Network. If you're looking to rescue your next hero or would like to help with transport or financial support, I highly recommend both of these organizations. Neither are affiliated with this program in any way, but they both have my sincere gratitude and support. Thank you to all of the heroes of the world, and a special shout out to Hairy Heroes Everywhere.